Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Once again, working on the Dana 44. Got the housing back from the powder coater. Now I got to finish disassembly, get the seals and races out. Let's get to it. I did go the extra mile, and I've got this powder coated. My local price for this was, I think, $140 plus the cost to blast it. I had several things that needed to be cleaned, but they did this, and they did the back side of this cover. I actually had it on there. They just powder coated the whole assembly. Before we put that carrier back in here, we need to replace this seal and this seal. We also need to take that input bearing and input seal, get those out. And I'm probably going to pull this race. It looks like it's in good shape, but I've got it this far apart, might as well take it out as well. Get all of that done, and I need to get this all cleaned out, make sure there's no grit or anything left over from when they redid the housing. To get these seals out, there's another one right here. What we need to do is we need to come in from here. I've got a socket that fits just inside of here, so it's not terribly sloppy because there isn't a whole lot of shoulder on that seal. So you put a socket in here, then you need a pipe or a bar or something that's long enough that you can push it in, and now that's against that seal. And I'm just going to hit the back side of this with a hammer, and it'll drive it out into the differential area. And that pulls that out. Now we just need to do the same thing from the other side. We just need a longer pipe. Next up, I've got to pull out the input seal. This one has been powder coated in, so it might be a little bit harder to get out, but shouldn't be bad. Typically, I just put something in here, pry it, and lift it out. I'm going to try a drift or a punch on this edge and see if I can fold it in a little. Pull. There we go. We've got this little dust cover here. I don't know if the new seal comes with one, so I'll keep that. Then we've got the input bearing. I mean, it looks kind of nasty, but the reality is that could be a lot of media from when it was media blasted. Putting a new one in regardless. Now we just have 2 races and a bunch of cleaning. So this is where this driver kit comes in handy again. We need to pick one that fits through this just barely. So it's down inside there. And now it lays flat against all the way around the race that's the input. Here's the shaft that comes with it. I don't know that I'm going to be able to hit it. Yeah, maybe. And that drives the race out from the underside. So this was sitting right against the race like this. And now that that one is out, I can flip it over and get a larger one of these to take this race out. Well, I screwed up and forgot to hit record, but this race was right here, and I flipped the whole case over and drove it out using a slightly larger piece. Again, it just sits on here just like that, and then you put that driver on it and hit it with a hammer, and they come out real easy. Now I just need to clean everything up so we can reassemble it. When you're disassembling, there are also shims right here that you need to keep track of. Take them out, clean them up, but they need to go back in when you reassemble this. This one had 5 of them. Once you've got everything nice and clean, it's time to start reassembly. I'm going to start with the seals, here and here. This seal has a lip, goes toward the outside. Same seal on both sides. I've seen a few different ways for putting these in. One is you can put this in here and put like a socket on it, and then run a pipe or something all the way out that tube so that it comes in, and then you can drive it. Requires a really long pipe, and I'm not a big fan of beating on these things. Anything that makes them out of round will help make them leak. Another way that I think would probably work just fine is to take a piece of all thread, and you'd want to cut it so that it's a little bit wider than your differential opening here. Put a socket on one end and probably another one on the other end, a couple of nuts, and as long as the socket or plate on this end is bigger than this opening, then this goes into the middle of the seal, and you just tighten the nut down and it'll push the socket against this. That was my original plan to show you that. But I'll be honest, I got lazy and bought one of these because it really wasn't very expensive. This is effectively what I was thinking with the piece of all thread. So let me show you how this works. First, we take it apart and then we're going to reassemble it. Run the nut on all the way down. Then we've got this bushing that goes on. Then we've got this press, I guess, foot or whatever you want to call it. This is going to push against the seal just like this. So we put the seal in. Put the seal in here about like so. So that goes on like that. This goes against this empty one, or if you had a seal over there. Inside of the seal, bring that back. Just sits there. And this comes up against it here. Now all you have to do is center this on the seal itself. Now when I tighten this, it's going to push that direction and install the seal. The downside right now is since this isn't mounted in a vehicle, it turns pretty easily, and turning this just wants to spin the entire assembly. So you kind of have to hold it, but it's still not too bad. As a one-person operation, this is much easier than trying to drive it where you're standing down at that end and trying to hit the seal in on this end. And there you go, that seal is in. Now we just repeat the same process with the other seal on this side. There we go, both seals installed. Next up, we're going to put the races in for the pinion. This race has been in the freezer overnight, so it's now cold, causing it to shrink a little bit. That should help drive it in. That race is hardened steel. It's actually extremely hard. So you don't have to worry a whole bunch about damaging it. But when I drive them in, something like brass is nice because you know this is going to deform before the race. Get it in, and we'll drive it in straight. Just continually move around the race to drive it in square to the bore. did you hear the change in sound when I hit? It becomes a much sharper, I guess, sound, higher pitched anyway. It's because we have now bottomed out. So I'm going to go one more time all the way around to make sure it's seated fully. Make sure I get all the brass out of there. And so that race is installed. Now we'll flip it over and do the input race. Same thing, we're going to drop it down in. This one's a little bit more challenging because you don't have much of a edge to get on. And it also wants to spin because it's on jack stands. Again, the sound that it makes is changed, so I know we're at the bottom. We go around one more time to make sure it's seated all the way around. For something like this, you might ask, why don't you use a seal driver like this to put it in? The reality is, this is extremely hard to get perfectly square on there, and then, perpendicular with this shaft. So it's very, very hard to get it just so that it's perfectly straight. So the race usually wants to tip just a little bit, and then it doesn't want to drive down in. If you're using a drift, you can always drive the high point and push it down in. It turns out to work a whole lot better than one of these. Hey, that's it for today. We're ready to start reassembling. Thanks for watching.